Welcome back, everyone. This is part 2 of fixturing a picnic table. And as you can see, I have the whole thing fixtured up, and I want you to take a real quick look at it. It's pretty wild looking, might be a little confusing, but I assure you, I'm gonna show you where every fixture goes and why I put it there. So let's take this thing apart. If you haven't watched part 1 of this fixturing of the picnic table, I highly suggest you do that because I cover a lot of basic stuff in that video. In this video, I'm going to be really talking about going up, getting off the welding table and how we're going to deal with that problem. And also, if we have a weldment already that exists, how do we locate that? Okay, put this guy on the floor. Okay, so where should we get started? This is the frame that I built in the last video. I built it flat on the table. And it actually goes like this when you go to sit on it. Your butt sits here, the tabletop sits here. But I'm gonna actually fabricate with it upside down. Okay. And so what I have to determine is I need to keep the twist out of it with relationship to the other one. I need to keep the roll or the tilt. I don't want it to tilt this way. And I don't want it to tilt this way. And then I also don't want it to be this way. This tube is the most important piece. So I'm gonna base all my fixtures off of trying to keep this plumb. And I mean plumb, I mean square and 90 to the table. I really don't care if it's plumb or not, just as long as it's square to the tabletop. So let's grab our drawings and we'll set up all the fixtures to do this. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is give myself a 0, 0. Much like in the last video, I want to give myself an X and a Y coordinate system to start from. And I'm going to use fence blocks. And I like to use fence blocks for this to set up my 0, 0. So I'm just going to grab a handful of them. And I'm going to give myself some room from the edge of the table in both directions. This is going to allow me to put some clamps and stakes or do whatever I need to do. It's always nice to give yourself a little extra room because you might have forgot something to account for. So I'm going to give myself a 0, 0 here. And I'm going to give myself a 0, 0 in the same grid somewhere up here. It doesn't have to be exact. We can always move them later. And then what I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to also give myself a 0, 0, but in this dimension here. Now, when I look at my drawing, it looks like that these 2 feet are the 0 point, but really they're not. And what you're seeing here is this elevation here. This says 19 from the edge of the tube. Let's get that dimension next. And I'm gonna do that with this piece. This is my tooth block again. Now that I want to catch this tube, I'm going to have to do some sort of hook. I can do this with my imagination, but it's easier to show you with the tube up here. You're probably going to say, Jason, just butt the tube up into the stop. There's your 0, 0. In the real world, yes, that kind of works, but what happens if I actually cut this tube a little short? And when I fabricated this, that this truly isn't 0, 0. Remember, I'm trying to locate this tube is the most important part. So how am I going to get this to be 19 inches from this stop to here? I can't put a stop here. I'm going to need some sort of dog leg to butt this up against. So I'm going to use this piece. This is what I call the dog leg block. As you can see, it has this pin and this little offset in here. And what that's going to allow me to do is take this and drop it right on top of this 6-inch riser. It's a nice tight fit, just like that. And as you can see on the back side here, I can put 2 screws in and I could lock it down. And I have him in the highest hole because it's gonna be positioned over the weld and I wanna give myself a little room to weld. So now I have an offset. So remember, I'm trying to get from 19 inches from this point to this point. So as you can see, now I have a stop. I'm gonna put my tooth washer underneath it, drop it down in the hole. Now I have this tube steel here to help visualize what this is for. I really don't need it to be there, but I think it helps you guys understand what I'm actually doing. So now I need 19 inches from here to here. So I can see that I'm 18 inches, but I know that this is 1 inch longer, so I'm at 19. All right, so now this isn't doing anything. Now I have my stop. So now this fence and this fence is keeping this tube from twisting. This fence is giving me my 19 inches, just like that. Or technically, this could be called 0, 0 now, because everything's pulling off here. When I start welding the tubes inside here, I'm going to be doing some fillet welds. So I want fixtures on the fillets. Technically, these are on the wrong side, so I will just move them over here. This is the hard stops. I want always hard stops on my fillets. It's going to really help with the distortion. If there's clamps over here, something could go wrong with the clamp, could not have been tight. It's good practice. And now what I need to do is match this piece exactly on the other side. This block is reversible. I can choose it to go this direction, or I can choose it to go this direction, and we'll lock it into place. And my drawing says I'm gonna be 61 inches apart. So we need to make sure that we cover 61 inches, and we'll just do that with the tape measure. 61, so I'm just gonna position him right here. Here's my 0 line right here. Put the block in the same grid. I looked at the other block on the other side, and all I need to do, I don't even need to measure, is just match up the same line right there. And if I pull a measurement, we should have 18 inches, which I do. Plus 1 is 19. And now we just need to set up that same 61 inches to control our twist over here on this side. So fixtures on fillets, let's set it to 61 inches from 0. Somewhere's in theirs. I like to just give myself an eyeball. And like I said before, always 2 pins for alignment. I like to put the alignment pin in the back and the lockdown bolt in the front. So 61 from 0, right there. 61. Lock him down. This guy can kind of go anywhere I want. I can pick any row. I don't need the tape measure to tell me where I need to go now. I just need to match the scale on the side to its brother over here, which puts me right there. And if you're really, really, really worried about it, you can always pull the tape measure. Looks good. They're identical. Now let's look at this. So I have 2 cross tubes. One is set at an 11-inch elevation. We won't worry about that yet. We just know we need to be at the 19 inches where the center line of this tube is. So let's set up 2 fixtures to get up in the air. And I'm gonna do that with this. This is the standard tooth block base. So instead of the 6-inch riser that I've used before, I'm gonna go with the 13. And he just goes in here like this, and we're gonna bolt him together. I really like this system because I can configure the tooth block the way I want it. If I need more 13 inches, I can configure them that way. If I need more 6 inches, I can go that way also. So I don't feel like I have to have 30 of one style. I can have a pretty versatile system. There's an imaginary line that runs right through the table. Remember, this is 0, 0, and I just need to be 19 inches off of that. I'm gonna position him about 12 inches away, because remember, I'm gonna be doing some welding in here, and I don't want this fixture to get in my way of welding. So I'm gonna pull him back. I like to get everything kind of situated, and then I can put a fence in here, because remember, this is my grid line. And if you want to, you can just use the tape measure to bump it up. Each one of these teeth, remember, are on 1/8 inch increments, so it works out in my favor right there. So now theoretically, this surface of this face is the same exact surface as this side of the tube. So we're making ourselves a nice line in here. We're gonna do the same thing to this one. Put a block under here. Second one's always the easiest because we can just match what's on the other side, and I can see my mark. And what, did I nail it right on the first try? Just to confirm. I always like to confirm. Nailed it. All right. Those 2 are in the same spot. Everything's looking really good. So if we look at our drawing, we got one that sits on the floor, one that sits in the air. Now it says 11 inches, but I'm actually gonna cheat. Now what I mean by that is I'm gonna space everything up on blocks. I like to use these 1, 2, 3 blocks. These are completely solid, no holes in them, and they have magnets. So everywhere where there's a tube gonna be going, I like to put a riser. Why do I do this? I like it because it's going to eliminate any errors or variation in the tube. When I go to do some welding, it gives me a little bit of elevation so I can run the bead all the way down to the end of the tube and not have to worry about making contact with the table. It also allows me to put a piece of sheet metal underneath the weld if I want to, you know, I'm really going to get blobbery. So we'll put a couple blocks down, just like this. So even though that dimension says 11 inches, I know I actually need to be 12 inches from the floor to where this cross tube is gonna sit. And remember, this cross tube is gonna hang up here in the air, right? Something like that. So we need to put the shelf right here. So I have 3 different ways to make a shelf. The first one is just a simple pin or a stop. I'm lucky because it's 12 inches, and one of these holes is probably gonna be exactly 12 inches. Did I nail it? I did. I lucked out. Okay, so now the material could sit right on top of this peg, and that works. Another solution is this one. This is the same riser block that we've been using on everything else, and it's got that 3/4 pin. And if I put that one in here, we're also gonna get 12 inches from the floor to the end. But what I like about this one is, see those capped holes in the bottom? I can permanently stick it there and bolt it into place. One of the reasons why I like this one also, it gives me a place to put a clamp, to clamp and strap over the tube a little bit later. So that's a really nice feature where this one doesn't allow me to do that. Or the other option, maybe it doesn't land on an exact number like 11 or 12. Maybe it lands on something weird. We can use the riser or configure it with the block again. Okay, so then we can put it on here and we can adjust the elevation. I'm going to show you something. So if we remove this washer, what will actually happen, right? And you put all the, I don't care how many bolts you put in here, right? You start hammering down on this, putting any weight on here. See, the potential to slide is there, and I don't like error. So I'm going to use the tooth washer, and it's going to solve that problem for me of this thing potentially sliding. Jump the teeth in 1/8 inch increments and get those weird measurements. That's the beauty of this tool right here. So I don't even have the nut or the bolt tight. It's just there. It's not going to slip. We tighten it up. It's not going to sag or slide. I'm going to keep it simple, and I'm just going to use this guy right here. And I'm going to confirm that he's at 12 inches. That works out great. Also, the bolts in the back keep the twist. See how it's wanting to be twisted? 2 socket-headed cap screws. It will prevent it from twisting. So I know some of this might seem a little bit excessive, but I guarantee this would speed up your process. Imagine you getting an order from the US Park Service for 200 of these picnic tables. First one you could do by measuring it all out using squares, carpenter squares. You could do the first one probably pretty quick, but the extra time that it takes to do that is gonna cost you in the long run. Where this is, you're spending more time up front to really smooth the job and get things done fast. And that's the beauty of a fixture table, is we're setting up parameters for ourselves where we don't have to use the tape measure anymore. We could just put our material in and start tacking. So I'm gonna set my material up here, and I'm gonna show you the next fixture we need to set up. See, this doesn't really look all that complicated now, does it? We've got some fixtures in the middle of the table. It's not looking that bad. I'm gonna slip him in. So I want to roll him into that stop, boom, just like that. You're probably gonna say, Jason, isn't this stop right here gonna keep the twist out of it? Well, it kind of is, but I don't trust this tubing to be perfectly square. And remember, everything that I'm doing is based off of this tube, so I'm gonna need a square or a stop right here to keep it plumb. I'm gonna just use the 13-inch riser again. Now I got a good square, something I can clamp to keep them from rolling in. Now the way I have this set up is that if this tube was cut too long or too short, it will not go in between here. And I cut these tubes myself, and I know that I cut them a 1/16 under, just because I just don't like fighting anything. Look at that. So remember our stop there? I gave me a stop. I'm raised up off the table with my shim. And now when I go to weld this, I can get all the way to the bottom of the corner, put a little piece of sheet metal or something underneath there to catch any spatter. It looks great. This is, remember, we're upside down, so I like to put the weld seam where you're not gonna see it. So weld seam goes up, and when you look like that, if this was cut too long, it would not fit in between these 2 points. Fantastic. It looks really, really, really good. But nothing's really set into place, so we need to put our clamps down, and I'll show you where I like to put the clamps. We'll use them all. What we don't use, we'll put back. When I do my clamping, I want to make sure that I'm clamping down to the table, but I also want to clamp back to the fixture. So in 2 locations. And I'm going to always try to clamp right on top of my block. And I'm going to try to position my clamps far away from the corner where I know I'm going to be welding, because I don't want them to get into the way. It's like that. Make sure I'm up against my stops. I like to grab these guys for this application because it points the handle straight up into the air. Nice, nifty little package, and that really holds this tight. So once again, I like to fixture on the fillets. This is a fillet weld or a T-joint. This tube and this tube are gonna wanna try to pull together and marry themselves when they go to weld this. So these two hard stops are really gonna slow that down. If this fixture was on the other side, it's gonna be relying on my clamp. And I don't know if this clamp is strong enough. It might actually stretch a little bit. So it's just good practice. You can't do it every time, but if I can, I try to do it. Nice and secure, and I'm just gonna go repeat the other side. So this side doesn't have the same riser like we do on the other side. I just have a hard stop. But I know that this is 3-inch material, and what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna use this block right here, and it's going to literally box in this tubing. If this was any other diameter tube, I would have to use my riser or use a side pusher clamp to do this. But I've got it boxed in now, so I know it can't move. So all I need to do is just push down. So the next thing we have to do is clamp down these two tubes right here. I'm gonna side push it with here, with this clamp. And then we're gonna just put one right here in the middle, hold them down. And use this guy right here. Remember I said before, this is why I like this. And if you can, see how I can position this over here off the side of the clamp. What's gonna happen is this is gonna wanna pick up. It's gonna wanna teeter-totter. So if you can bring the clamp over and clamp it right over the top, something like that. If you happen to have a tall clamp, you can bypass this altogether. You can do that. Lots of clamping options. Another option too is just to use your regular clamps and grab the tube and then hold it back to the fixture behind it. It's a great solution. Doesn't take a lot of pressure. Just like that. Woo! We did it. It's all clamped and fixtured and ready to weld. This might seem excessive, but if you had 200 of these, from here on out, you just have to remove clamps and drop in your material and tack, 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 and this thing would be ready to go. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed this little mini series on fixturing. I love sharing my ideas with you. I want you to feel comfortable when you go to weld and fabricate. I know if you want a Fireball table, go check out fireballtool.com. You can find all your needs over there. I'm gonna continue to make these videos for you to help you feel more comfortable, and I'll see you guys on the next one.